All right, let's do this. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Uper Farmer for another edition of the Cigar Garage Talks. I hope you're all doing well. Tonight, even though the cigar is not banded, as I was pulling it out of the cellophane, the band popped off. We have the box-pressed Rebellion from American Viking. Delicious cigar, nice dark Maduro wrapper, box press, which gives it a little bit of flavor, supposedly. I haven't been sold that the box pressing a cigar will change the flavor, but I've seen enough reviews online, heard enough discussions about it that, all right, we'll give her a whirl. But it is quite good. As I've explained in a few videos, I'm trying to support the American Viking brand a little bit more. Tonight we have from Blackrock's Coconut Brown. I have had this beer. I actually had it at Blackrock's on tap. Not bad. Darker beers. Usually accustomed to using on this channel, but you gotta switch it up every now and then. Go for a nice red or a nice brown. There you have brown. Good size head on it, actually. Yep, that's what I remembered. A little sweet, little coconut. Definitely a good hint of brown in there. So, good little beer. If you do get a chance to try it out, I do recommend it. So tonight, we're going to do a little bit of a pivot. I talked about, I think, 3 or 4 topics in the last video. The video about my biggest mistake ever. Talked about 3 or 4 topics at the beginning of that video stuff. I was like, well, I'm going to write those down and make a list. Wrote them down. But the thing is like what happens so many times in life, a topic kind of presented itself that I think I want to talk about. It's what happens when a public servant, or someone in EMS more specifically, dies. Whether it's in the field, whether it's on a call, whether it's while they're working, even an off-duty, retired individual, usually someone who dies while they're still in active service. We, back at one of the ambulance, or one of the counties I worked in, there were multiple ambulance agencies in that county. Just got news that one of the providers suddenly passed away. It sounds like kind of unexpectedly. I didn't know this person extremely well. I don't think we ever went out for beers. We did, though, spent a lot of time on calls together, treated a fair number of patients. Even though she worked for a different service than I did, our service would sometimes rent out or send out people to help out to some of these other ambulance corps. Send out, we call the rent-a-paramedics, where we'd send out our paramedics to help out with services that might not have paramedics with them. I'm still getting some of the details. It still is quite new. When this video posts, it will kind of be old news because it'll take a few weeks for this one to post. But it's something I think I want to address. It's interesting when a public servant dies. And now I'm going to talk exclusively about my experience with EMS. Mind you, though, I think a lot of it is transferable to the other public services, whether that's fire, police. I've even had military people say that a lot of it is very similar because our mentalities are very similar, our cultures are close. So again, this might not be verbatim or one for people who experience a death of a coworker with the fire service or law enforcement. Again, talking about EMS. how we deal with it, how we don't deal with it, the surprising facts, traditions we have, so on and so forth. So, of course, the one I'm sure all of you are very familiar with is the black sash. They put over a patch or a badge. Some guys will wear armbands. There's a black armband to show that they've had a member of their brotherhood die. The rationale behind that, we don't get time off to mourn. At least, normally we don't. We can't close up shop for a day. Other businesses I've worked for, companies I worked for, when an employee died, it was very traditional to close for at least a day, if not 24, 48 hours, or a whole week. But as a public servant, we can't shut down. We're not given the time to mourn. We're not given the time to grieve even. Some of these individuals who die will die in tragic situations, will die very young, very suddenly. But the thing is, we need to continue. We need to continue at our best. That black sash is, one, a show of solidarity between all responders. I've put many black sashes up on my Facebook page and covered my own badge a few times to show my respect for other agencies who had members who died. But it allows people to know that we are mourning. We get accused a lot of times because we have to work schedules. We have to have crews cover. There's an accusation that we don't care. We do deeply care, of course. So a way to show that we're mourning, we're thinking about that person, is to put on that black sash. It's an outward public display. Also acts as a great reminder to us and our fellow coworkers about the reality of our job. Many individuals in public service and EMS and fire and police will die because of work-related stuff. And we've known this for many years, that working these careers are not good. They're not good for your health, mentally, physically, socially not good for you. EMS, you're probably going to end up with back injuries, knee injuries. You eat a lot of junk food. It's not like you can sit at the fire hall and have a home-cooked meal every night like the fire station does. And I poke fun at them, of course. But it's true. We all have our dangerous things, our bad habits. There's a lot of information coming out now about cancer rates and heart disease in firefighters due to the off-gassing of the smoke. We find there's high degrees of cyanide in it. There's high degrees of these polycarbonates that are being released, and different. We even find different fire suppression foams. There's a great one, nice foam we used to use. It contained a chemical known as PFAS, which if I had used that chemical name, even 5 years ago, no one would even know what I was talking about. It's now in the news everywhere. I'm talking about this fire suppression foam, this PFAS. Well, we had a lot of individuals exposed. We're just now finding turnout gear will off-gas for up to, I believe it's 48 hours to 1 week, releasing toxic chemicals. So we have a lot of firefighters, especially in volunteer and smaller corps, will throw their turnout gear in the back of their cars, in the back of their trucks. Whole time they're slowly getting poisoned. I do know quite a few firefighters who have some major health issues, cardiologically and due to oncology. And that question is there. Was it something they were exposed to? Speaking again from the EMS side, our sleep patterns are thrown off heavily. We have a lot of problems with cortisol and stress and weight gain, injury patterns. Plus, we get exposed to our fair share of pathogens. Some of these pathogens are quite debilitating. I remember many times I'd be called in, sometimes at home, to be rushed to the hospital to take a prophylactic antibiotic or a countermeasure because someone had a bacterial meningitis or some weird disease that I then had to be screened for to see if I was adversely affected to it. We get exposed to other contaminants, much like fire. We sit at fire grounds, but someone gets covered in a chemical of some type. We do the best we can to decontaminate them, but a lot of times we're then transported in that chemical. The one I always talk to EMTs and paramedics when I'm training them. I mentioned I worked in the prison system. I was a paramedic with an ambulance unit that took prisoners to the hospital. I've been exposed to lots of the chemical agents they'll use to control some of the very combative patients, including CS and OS gas. Not healthy, not good for you. So that black sash reminds us of how quickly we could leave this earth. How death is around us. And it allows us time to mourn and show our mourning for our fallen comrade. So in EMS, we are used to death. Death is something that is almost our friend. A very familiar friend, our neighbor, sometimes I've heard it described as. I myself have had multitudes of people who have died on me while on the rig, or died just shortly before I got there, just after I dropped them off at the hospital. Again, I've mentioned this before, death doesn't bother me. Being around someone who's dying or has just died, it's not an issue. Again, that's from years and years of experiencing it. But these individuals, it's one of the hardest things you'll ever experience. For people who can deal so well with death, we do break down, we do cry. The death of a co-worker, comrade, a brother in arms, someone from the Brotherhood will affect us very much, as it should. I would be the first person to admit that I've gotten very emotional when I've had partners or fellow members of the Brotherhood die. And it's a weird sensation for us to get emotionally upset with death. Something that we deal with. There are very few, very, very, very few times when I got sad when someone died in the back of my ambulance. Again, it's part of my job. It was the reason I was there, was to combat death itself. Sometimes I would hold patients' hands as they died, pray with them. If nothing else, just be with them in those final few moments. I could deal with that. But to have a whole department, a whole group of individuals who are usually okay with death, don't show emotion around it, break down and cry because they've lost one of their own. It's a sensation that's impressive to experience. It's interesting. I can't even describe it. It's almost primal. The loss of someone who you'd relate to as almost a brother or a sister, a family member, when in truth they're usually not. The connection we have with each other that we build on the rigs or squad cars or rescue trucks or fire trucks, I've always told people I think it transcends that family connection. Thankfully, all my brothers and sisters are still alive, but I don't think I'd have the same emotional response if I lost one of my brothers or sisters as if I had lost one of my partners that I used to work with. I don't know what it is. It's something, you bond with them. when you experience life and death with them, when you experience near death, near tragedy. There is that bonding that doesn't come from blood, doesn't come from sharing genetic information or growing up or living with someone. It's a lot deeper. So sometimes the emotional response can be very unexpected from fellow public servants who lived. Not to mention, this is going to sound weird, I think some of us have a hard time dealing with it because we don't. People expect us to be able to deal well with it because we deal with death all the time. But this is something different. This hits us differently. And we're almost upset with ourselves because we're getting emotional, because we're crying. I remember the first public servant who died, and I found myself just utter crying at the memorial service. It sparked off, of course, and I'll explain that in a second. They had the final call out, which I'll explain here. You're talking about people who've been in EMS for, oh hell, some of us were in for 30 years. Everyone breaking down into tears after hearing that final call out. It's interesting, especially when some of these people I've been around with very tragic deaths. Everything from babies that were only a few weeks old to teenagers and young kids and tragic deaths of adults, people we've worked our souls into trying to save but yet still pass, and it doesn't have that same response. Even a few family members that I have had die, as far as like grandfathers and whatnot and aunts and uncles, I haven't had the same emotional response. I don't think I would. So let's talk about at least EMS. We do, and I know fire and law enforcement do this, but I'm talking from the side again of EMS. When one of our members die, we do a final call out. Huge symbolism with this. Starts off, they page out the tones of the department they worked for. And they call out the person's name 3 times. After no response on the 3rd time, the 3rd page out calling their name. There then is given their full name, their position, how long they've been there, how long they've been in EMS. It then ends with the message of, we'll take it from here. You've earned your rest, and we'll take it from here. Some variation of that, of course. I mean, it varies from state to state and dispatch center to dispatch center. The symbolism in that last call out is amazing, and it astonishes me when I talk to people about it, other first responders, other public servants, and they don't get what all the symbolism is built in there. I wrote a little bit of an essay, if you will, a few years ago. It keeps popping on my Facebook page, where I explained as much of the symbolism as I knew. I then learned some more about these call-outs. So first off, kind of explain the symbolism. We call the person's name 3 times. 3, in case you don't know, is the universal distress call. 3 fires, 3 flags, ... dash, 3 sets of 3. SOS doesn't stand for anything. Hate to burst all your bubbles. It doesn't stand for save our ship, save our soul. It is just the 3 is the universal call for help. Flash your lights 3 times, whatever it might be. That's to let everyone know we need help. So there's that. And a lot of departments have, they'll call in for a status check. And if you don't answer by the 3rd time they call for a status check, we know there's trouble. So if we ever hear 3 status checks, 3 times they call a unit, 3 times they call someone's name, it's a signal for everyone who's on that frequency to stop what you're doing and listen. because there's an emergency. Someone needs help. Something happened. So that set of 3 is to show a disaster's happened. An emergency's happened. We lost one of our own. We all need to stop what we're doing and listen. Along with that, they use the person's full name. A lot of times they'll start off with the unit that they worked for. If they had a badge number, they'll start off their badge number. But they'll use their full name at some point. This is Radio Etiquette 101, a huge no-no. You never use full names of anyone. I had many codes I went by when I used radio traffic. You didn't call out, "Hey, Joe. Hey, Joe Mackey, how's it going?" Never do that on the radio. Huge no-no. So to use someone's name, it personalizes them. It humanizes them. We'll use the codes. Again, it's originally thought, well, we're going to keep our identity secret. They know who we are. If you listen to the radio long enough, you know who Medic 118 was. You know who that guy is. But to call them out, that makes them human. That gives them an identity. That is something that is almost shocking to hear a name over the radio. It's very shocking. A lot of guys will get a shiver when you hear a real name put across the radio because it's such a no-no. So that calls the importance of the message. We only ever use a real name when it's vitally important that we do. We then talk about their career, who they were, what they did, kind of give them their obituary. Now, what you may or may not know about radio transmission is theoretically, when it's broadcast, it gets broadcast omnidirectional, everywhere. And it actually gets broadcast into space. And hypothetically, as it's going off into space, it'll continue on forever. And as I had one person explain, that message gets to heaven. It gets sent off into the space. Their name, their rank, what they did is out there in the ethos for eternity. It'll just keep going. Theoretically, of course. So the whole universe knows they passed. A complete announcement, a recognition of it. Once you're done saying their obituary, this process normally takes more than a minute, and that's significant. In especially larger cities, you don't tie traffic up for more than 30 seconds. 20 seconds, you're already starting to get on people's nerves. 30 seconds, dispatch will cut you off. The fact that it lasts over a minute, you're chewing up vital communication time. You may be stopping someone from calling the hospital or calling in an emergency or calling another call or calling in a unit or whatever it might be. When you're tying up the radio, only one person can talk at a time. That's to show how important they were. We're doing another no-no when it comes to the radio. We are dispatch. We're tying it up. We're holding up that line for more than a minute. That's significant. That's something you just don't do because you're basically shutting down the entire emergency system at that point to interrupt the radio like that. Now it's symbolic because now we have stuff like cell phones, we have direct communication, we have multiple ways of contacting hospitals, other units, central dispatch, and whatnot. But the symbolism there is that we stop. We are stopping. Everything stops so this message can get through and will not be blocked. So we do stop for a minute and 2 minutes, but it is something we stop for. Just like the 3 call-outs, stop what you're doing and listen up. Something's happened. It's an emergency. And the final and most beautiful part of these last call-outs, in my opinion, really is the fact that the last part of the message. You can rest now. We've got it from here. We'll cover from here. Especially with these volunteer corps, these smaller ambulance agencies, and even bigger ones too. we're never at rest. The phone can ring, pager can go off. Next thing you know, you're hauling out there because a plane crashed, a train rolled over, a bus went in the ditch, a chemical spilled. You get an all hands on deck where they call out and have everyone available. Please respond. Everyone who's not available, make yourself available. Many calls I've called out to that. But we believe when that person dies, that's finally, they get to rest. They can turn off their pager. They don't have to respond anymore. They're done. There's of course, the kind of cliche, oh, we can rest when we're dead. Well, for public servants, that's very true. We are always on duty. I have to laugh. I was driving a friend of mine. I don't know where we're going, probably the grocery store or something. He needed a lift. He was not EMS, not a public servant. He was actually a lawyer. And all of a sudden in front of us, we see a car accident happen. Quickly, I pull up my little jump kit and start rendering aid till the ambulance gets there, give my report. They were well staffed. Actually, the individuals weren't that bad off. So I quickly wash my hands down with a bottle of water, spray on some hand sanitizer, jump back in my car, and we start driving. And my friend is just almost in awe and shock of what just happened. And I kind of saw he did. I thought it was the blood and the cars, and I might have had some blood on me. I'm not sure. I don't think I did. We finally got to the destination. He's like, "What did you just do?" I said, "Well, the person needed help. I grabbed my jump kit and I gave them treatment." He said, "Well, first off, who pays for that stuff in the jump kit?" "Well, I do. Sometimes it gets replaced from the ambulance. They'll give us some supplies and whatnot." And he said, "Did you get the person's name and address and phone number?" "Well, no. Why would I?" "Well, aren't you going to send him a bill?" "Well, no. I'm not going to send him a bill." He said, "You guys astonish me. It's amazing. You're the only profession that gives away your wares for free." And I sat kind of dumbfounded looking at him like, What are you talking about?" He said, "Think about it. What other profession would be driving down the road, going on a personal errand, they're not on duty, and then pull over to render help at their own personal expense, their own personal safety, and then do it for free?" He's like, "Could you see a plumber driving down the street and see someone's septic line backing up and their septic field overflowing, pull over and rotor-rooter it for free?" He said, "Do you ever see like an engineer drive by a dilapidated building and pull over and quickly draft them up plans to do a remodel?" He said, "Hell, I'm a lawyer." He says, "If I pull over an accident scene, it's to give my business card so I can get a good chunk of their settlement." He says, "You public servants, you EMSers, you're crazy. You give away your service for free." It's very true. If I could charge for any of the medical advice I gave friends, family, complete strangers, I would be very well off right now. I get calls constantly, especially from family, asking about medical conditions, medical treatments, stuff happening with drugs on the market. Complete strangers I've treated more than my fair share. People injured, I see them fall and get hurt or get in a car accident. I've pulled over countless times to help someone. But it is true, we're one of the only professions that would do that. Only public servants would dream of doing something that crazy, giving away what your expertise is, what you've trained and spent lots of money to become a professional in, and you give it away for free? Pretty bad business model, if you ask me. So it really is. We let that person know when we shoot their radio wave off into the ether, they can finally rest. They're not going to have to give up medical advice anymore. They're not going to have to put out a fire or catch the bad guy. they can finally rest. And then the last part of that message is, we've got it from here. I guarantee you, I've been in the situation where I've been deemed, I've been working for 36, 48 hours, big disaster scenes, deemed I need to rest. I need to go take a minute for myself. And that's what you tell someone. Listen, go take a break. We've got it from here. And I can't shut off until someone says that. I've got it. We'll take the responsibility. We'll take on your responsibility, because as a public servant, we see as ourselves as responsible. We're the ones who are responsible for taking care of others, seeing if they live or die. So that last statement is extremely powerful. To tell that individual who died, we've got it. We've got your back. We got you covered. You've done your job and you did it well. Thank you for your service. You can rest now. I have chills and shivers just thinking about it now. It does elicit an emotional response just thinking about them. I have a whole file of saved last call-outs. Much like some people clip obituaries, I'm sure, but it's intense to hear that, know the significance behind it, know the meaning behind why we do that. It's an amazing tribute to a person who gave of themselves, put their own health and safety at risk for others. It's something I wish every human being could experience, honestly. I wish every person on this planet could be a public servant, even for a year, to truly understand, one, what us public servants go through, but two, to get that deeper understanding and respect and what it means to give of yourself, that this isn't what can the world do for me. The cliche speech, don't ask what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Well, forget that crap. What can you do for another human being? Not asking what they can do for you. What can they give me to advance myself? But what can I give to you? What can I give up? What can I sacrifice? My health, my safety, a good night's sleep, my time, my money, my training and expertise. What can I give to you? And I mean that to the complete stranger listening to this video right now, who I'll probably never meet. If we ever did and you needed help, as I said, I'm a paramedic through and through. I will help you. And that's a bizarre feeling or bizarre idea in today's society. We don't have that. We don't have people wanting to just help one another for the sole purpose of helping them. It's always, what's in it for me? What can I get out of this? Me, 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 me. A public servant, even shitty ones, they still give a lot of themselves for someone else. And they don't have to. There are many ways to make money, to make a difference, which is very selfish. And I would like to say, I'm not trying to cut down on other professions, but I am. Why don't you have the plumber volunteer his service and not expect to get paid? Why don't you have the lawyer represent someone pro bono? Why don't you have that engineering firm that just designs another building for someone? Why don't we do that in other professions? Why is that missing in society? Why is that missing in the human experience? Why is it only those select few who become public servants that can experience that bliss, that joy, that deeper sense of humanity that we should all have and strive for? As I talked about, that's one of those things I found addicting in being a paramedic. To give of myself, to put others in front of me, it's an addicting feeling. It's an amazing feeling. And it is humbling to think that that won't leave me until the day I die. So, anyway, very intense and kind of a little bit on the dark side, I suppose, video. But I hope you learned a little bit about what it's like when a first responder dies and the symbolism alone for that last call out. It's an amazing thing. Yeah. On that note, I'll leave you here. I hope everyone's doing well. Stay safe out there. And we'll see you on the next one.